"Keep your money, ma'am." The words calm, despite the hammering rain, cut through her astonished relief. Ethan Miller grease on his calloused hands, and a hidden desperation shadowing his eyes, had just wrestled her dead luxury pickup truck back to life on a deserted, storm-lashed road. She clutched a sleek wallet that likely held more than he earned in an entire year, mud-caking her surprisingly delicate fingers. "But I can't I have to compensate you." "You can," he interrupted his gaze, unwavering even as rainwater streamed down his face. "Just help someone else down the line. That's payment enough for me." Her perfectly shaped eyebrows shot up a flicker of disbelief, and something unreadable in her eyes. Who was this man? And why did his simple, impossible words echo louder than the thunder itself? What would you do in her shoes? And what do you think happens when an act of selfless kindness meets a world of hidden wealth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're intrigued by encounters that change everything, make sure to subscribe for the rest of this story and more like it. The old Chevy coughed a rattling, protesting sound that Ethan Miller knew by heart. He patted the dashboard, Gumeg Slovna. "Come on, old girl," he murmured, glancing in the rearview mirror at his 7-year-old son, Leo, who was meticulously drawing superheroes in a worn notebook. "She's not exactly a spring chicken anymore, is she, Dad?" Leo piped up, not looking from his artwork. Ethan chuckled a tired but warm sound. If this old girl could talk Leo, she'd have demanded retirement benefits years ago. But she gets us there, champ. Most of the time. Getting there was a daily battle, a testament to Ethan's skill as a mechanic and his dwindling savings. Each sputtered mile was a reminder of bills stacked high, of dreams deferred, since Jessica, his ex-wife, had walked out, leaving a void in their lives, and an even bigger one in his faith in easy promises. Now it was just him and Leo, navigating life's potholes with grit grease, and the fervent hope that things wouldn't get worse before they got better. He was on his way to drop Leo at an after-school program before heading to a late shift at a high-end garage, a place where he fixed the gleaming toys of the rich, while his own life felt perpetually stuck in neutral. The rain, which had been a menacing drizzle, suddenly unleashed its fury. Fat, angry drops hammered the windshield, the wipers fighting a losing battle. Ethan squinted, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. It was on a slick, less-traveled back road, a shortcut he sometimes risked that he saw it. A sleek, dark-colored pickup truck, decidedly out of place, stalled awkwardly on the muddy shoulder, its hazard lights blinking like frantic eyes. Beside it, a figure in a mud-streaked flannel shirt and jeans wrestled with the hood, a flashlight beam cutting erratically through the downpour. "Looks like someone's having a worse day than us, Dad," Leo observed, finally looking up. Ethan's instinct, honed by years of coaxing life back into stubborn engines, kicked in. "Stay put, Leo," he said, pulling over a safe distance behind the stranded vehicle. He grabbed his heavy-duty toolkit from the passenger seat, the familiar weight a small comfort. He zipped up his worn jacket, pulled his cap lower, and plunged into the deluge. "Everything all right over there?" Ethan shouted over the roar of the rain, his voice calm and steady. The figure startled, spinning around. It was a woman. Her hair was plastered to her forehead, face smudged with either dirt or grease, and she looked thoroughly exasperated. Ethan noticed with a mechanic's eye that despite the mud, her boots were expensive, and the flannel, though soaked, had a cut that spoke of quality. "Not your typical farmer, then?" "All right, no, not even close," she exclaimed, her voice tight with frustration, but surprisingly firm. This metal beast just died on me. 1 minute it's purring, the next silence. And now it's making a sound like a dying whale." She gestured vaguely towards the engine. "I think the catalytic converter might have a serious malfunction, Or perhaps it's an issue with the primary fuel injector assembly. Ethan blinked a small smile, tugging at his lips, despite the miserable weather. He crouched by the front wheel, his experienced gaze already scanning for obvious issues. "Ma'am," he said, his voice carrying a hint of dry amusement, to put it simply. "This iron horse of yours is on strike, demanding better working conditions, I reckon. Let me see if its boss has been too stingy with the upkeep." He popped the hood to the hiss of steam, a familiar greeting. The woman stepped back, watching him with a mixture of doubt and desperation. Ethan's hands moved with an assured grace, checking connections, listening his senses, attuned to the silent language of broken machinery. He worked efficiently, the rain sluicing off him, completely absorbed. "You a mechanic?" she asked, having to raise her voice. "Something like that," Ethan replied, tightening a clamp. "Fixed more stubborn engines than I've had hot dinners this month." He didn't mean for it to sound like a plea, just a fact. After a few more minutes of diagnostic prodding, he found the culprit. A loose connection, complicated by a minor sensor failure, something easily overlooked by an untrained eye, but critical. With a few deft maneuvers using tools that were extensions of his own hands, he bypassed the faulty sensor temporarily and secured the connection. "All right," he announced, stepping back and wiping his greasy hands on an old rag he produced from his pocket. "Give her a try now. But go easy. She'll get you where you need to go, but she'll need a proper look-see at a garage soon." The engine turned over, sputtered, then caught with a surprisingly healthy roar. The woman's face, visible in the glow of the dashboard lights, was a canvas of disbelief and immense relief. You fixed it just like that. Just like that." Ethan confirmed, a quiet pride in his voice. She fumbled in her soaked jeans pocket. I don't have much cash on me, but how much do I owe you? I can transfer." Ethan held up a hand, shaking his head. "No charge, ma'am. No charge. But you got soaked to the bone. And your time? Consider it a professional courtesy," Ethan said, a wry smile playing on his lips. "Money's tight, I won't lie, but not for this kind of roadside rescue. Just pay it forward sometime, and maybe invest in some better, perfume for this truck. Might keep her from sulking next time." The woman stared at him, truly stared, as if she'd never encountered such a sentiment. "Pay it forward." She repeated softly, the words foreign on her tongue. Then her gaze flickered to his old Chevy and to Leo, who was now pressed against the window watching them. A few days later, an expensive-looking, crisp envelope arrived at Ethan's small rented house. It bore no return address, just his name typed impeccably. Inside, a heavy card requested the presence of Mr. Ethan Miller at an address that, when he looked it up online, made his jaw drop. It was a sprawling estate on the wealthy outskirts of town, a place he'd only ever seen pictures of, a place that Leo, with wide eyes, described as looking like something from a science fiction movie. Dad. "Do they have robots?" Ethan felt a knot of unease tighten in his stomach. Why would someone from a place like that want to see him? He replayed the rainy encounter in his mind. The expensive boots, the quality of her seemingly ordinary clothes, her surprise at his refusal of payment. He had a sinking feeling this was about more than a broken-down truck. Dressed in his only decent shirt and jeans that had seen better days, Ethan drove the protesting Chevy through imposing wrought-iron gates that opened silently as he approached. He parked where a uniformed attendant, politely, if a little surprisedly, directed him, feeling a universe fill from his usual grease-stained existence. He was led through hallways that echoed with a hushed opulence, each painting, each sculpture, silently screaming wealth. And then he was ushered onto a sun-drenched terrace overlooking manicured gardens that stretched as far as the eye could see. There, standing by a wrought-iron table, was the woman from the roadside. But she was transformed. The mud and flannel were gone, replaced by an elegant tailored dress. Her hair, now dry, cascaded in soft waves. This was not the stranded farmer he had helped. This was someone else. This was Claire Sterling. She turned a polite, almost enigmatic smile on her lips. "Mr. Miller," she said, her voice the same, yet different in this new context. Smoother, more assured. "Thank you for coming." Ethan swallowed his hands, feeling rough and out of place. "Ma'am," he managed, his mind racing. "I hope this isn't still about that truck repair. Like I said, no charge." Claire's smile widened slightly. "No, Mr. Miller. It's not about the repair directly, although your unconventional payment terms did leave an impression." She paused, her gaze thoughtful, as she studied him. "I believe the universe, or perhaps just a very stubborn engine, brought us together for a reason. I have a proposition for you. A chance for a significant change." Ethan stared at her, completely bewildered. A proposition, change. He thought, his mind struggling to process. Is this lady going to offer me a job as a private mechanic for her entire family dynasty, or something? The flickering light of hope he'd barely dared to acknowledge after their first meeting now felt like a confusing, potentially blinding spotlight. Ethan blinked the opulence of the sun-drenched terrace, suddenly feeling a little too bright, a little too unreal. A proposition, he repeated the word, feeling foreign on his tongue. "Ma'am, with all due respect, I fix engines. I don't usually get involved in propositions from people who own places like this." He gestured vaguely at the sprawling gardens, a silent testament to a world so far removed from his own scraped-knuckle reality. Claire Sterling's smile didn't falter. If anything, it softened with a hint of understanding. "Please, Mr. Miller, call me Claire, and I assure you this proposition is very much about fixing things. Not just engines, perhaps, but something a little bigger." She invited him to sit, and a moment later, a staff member silently appeared with iced tea. Ethan perched negotiously on the edge of an ornate garden chair that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Claire leaned forward, her eyes a clear, intelligent blue fixed on his. "I own a piece of property not far from here," she began, her voice calm and measured. "It has an old, disused barn. For years it's been nothing but a storage space. But I've been thinking, I want to convert it into a fully equipped modern auto repair shop, a community garage, if you will." Ethan listened, his expression carefully neutral, though his mind was already whirring with questions. A community garage run by a billionaire. The idea, Claire continued, is to offer high-quality vehicle repairs. But here's the part that might interest you, Ethan. A significant portion of our services, perhaps even all of them initially, would be offered free of charge or on a pay-what-you-can basis to those in our community who are struggling. Single parents, veterans, the elderly on fixed incomes, families trying to make ends meet. Ethan's eyebrows shot up. Free repairs. He thought of the countless times he'd had to tell a desperate customer that the repair would cost more than their car was worth. The times he'd seen good people forced to choose between fixing their only means of transport and putting food on the table. "And this is where you come in," Claire said, her gaze unwavering. "I need someone to run it. Someone with exceptional skill, undeniable integrity, and a genuine understanding of what it means to struggle. Someone who knows the value of a helping hand because they've rarely received one themselves." She paused. "My team did a little research after our rainy encounter. They found you, Ethan, and your reputation, your work ethic, your dedication to your son, Leo. It's all quite remarkable. Ethan felt a flush creep up his neck. Researched him. It felt intrusive, yet he couldn't deny a flicker of something. Pride. No more like stunned acknowledgement. He swallowed his throat suddenly dry, so he said his voice carefully, even trying to inject a note of levity. He didn't feel what you're saying is, I'd be the Chief Executive Officer of Wrenches and Spark Plugs. And the salary Mrs. Claire. Would it cover, say, a new set of tires for my old Chevy? Claire chuckled a genuine warm sound that surprised him. It would cover a great deal more than that, Ethan. This isn't a volunteer position, it's a partnership. I provide the capital, the facility, the equipment. You provide the expertise, the leadership, the heart. We build it together. And it would be named Leo's Corner Garage. Ethan's breath caught. Leo's Corner Garage. The name hit him with an unexpected force. He thought of his son, of the constant worry about his future, the quiet sacrifices. This was something else, entirely. This wasn't just a job offer. It sounded like a lifeline wrapped in a fairy tale. And that was precisely what made every alarm bell from his past clang furiously. Jessica had also spun pretty fairy tales once upon a time. They'd all ended in dust and disillusionment. Why me? He asked the question, blunt stripped of any pretense. There must be 100 mechanics in this town, a dozen with more qualifications, cleaner workshops. His gaze hardened slightly. What's the catch, Claire? People like. You don't just hand out opportunities like this to people like me without a very good reason or a very hidden string attached. Claire didn't flinch from his directness. She leaned back, her expression turning more somber. There are no hidden strings, Ethan. As for why you... Because you fixed my truck in a storm and asked for nothing but for me to pay it forward. Because you spoke to me like a person, not an account balance. You have no idea how rare that is in my world. She looked out over her perfect gardens for a moment, a flicker of something, loneliness, in her eyes. I have resources, yes, more than I could ever spend. But what I'm looking for, what Sterling Global's philanthropic arm is looking for, is to make a tangible difference. To invest in people, not just profit margins. Money can't buy the sound of a perfectly tuned engine, can it, Ethan? Or the relief on someone's face when they realize they can get to work again. Her sincerity was disarming, but Ethan's skepticism, a shield honed by years of disappointment, remained. He thought of Leo. If this was real, but the if was a chasm. Just then, as if summoned by the thought, Leo himself, who had apparently been exploring nearby with a discreet staff member, came bounding onto the terrace, clutching a bright red toy truck. Dad, look. Mrs. Claire said this place is like a castle. Wow, is there a spot here for my big toy truck, too? He asked, his eyes wide, with innocent excitement, as he looked at Claire, then at the vast expanse of the lawn. The tension in Ethan's shoulders eased a fraction at the sight of his son's uncomplicated joy. Claire smiled warmly at Leo. Absolutely, Leo. We'll find the perfect parking spot for it. Ethan watched them, a complex brew of emotions churning within him. Hope, terrifying and seductive, wrestled with a cynicism so deep-rooted it felt like part of his DNA. He thought of the endless grind, the constant worry. He thought of Leo's future. This could be it, or it could be another beautiful lie. He took a deep breath, the scent of expensive flowers and manicured grass filling his lungs. A world away from the oil and exhaust fumes that usually defined his days. He looked Claire Sterling straight in the eye. "All right, Claire," he said slowly, the words feeling heavy with consequence. "I'll consider your proposition. For Leo." And because, frankly, my current career trajectory involves hoping my own truck doesn't join yours in a roadside protest. He allowed himself a small, grim smile. But let's get one thing straight. If I do this, I do it my way. No fancy boardroom talk, no cutting corners on quality. And if I smell anything even remotely resembling, let's say expensive perfume mixed with burnt motor oil, I'm out. And I'm taking my toolkit with me. To his surprise, Claire didn't just smile. She laughed, a clear, unburdened sound that echoed on the terrace. "Deal Ethan Miller," she said, extending her hand. "I actually prefer the smell of honest motor oil to Chanel No. 5 any day." Ethan took her offered hand. It was softer than his, but her grip was firm, surprisingly strong. As their hands met, it wasn't just an agreement being sealed. It was a fragile truce between two vastly different worlds, a hesitant step onto a path, Olun, where the promise of change flickered bright and dangerously alluring. The real work and the real doubts were only just beginning. The old barn, once a forgotten shell chasm on Claire Sterling's vast property, began to breathe again. Days turned into weeks, filled with the sounds of hammering, sawing, and the surprisingly harmonious blend of Ethan Miller's practical know-how and Claire's determined, if sometimes clumsy, enthusiasm. Ethan, in his element, moved with the quiet confidence of a master craftsman. He assessed, planned, and executed, transforming the dusty, cobweb-laden space into what was starting to look like a real professional garage. Leo, after school, would often be there, a small, serious apprentice, handing Ethan tools or meticulously organizing stray nuts and bolts, his earlier awe of Claire slowly morphing into a comfortable familiarity. Claire, true to her word, was a partner, not just a benefactor. She'd arrive in practical jeans and a work shirt, a far cry from her tailored Sterling global attire, ready to tackle whatever task Ethan assigned, though her skills didn't always match her zeal. One afternoon, Ethan found her valiantly trying to paint a newly primed wall, a task that had resulted in more paint on the floor and a nearby stack of tires than on the intended surface. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, a reluctant smile playing on his lips. "Ms. Sterling," he drawled, "I think you might be better off sticking to those financial spreadsheets. This wall looks like it was attacked by a Technicolor unicorn." Claire, a streak of blue paint adorning her cheek, spun around, paintbrush dripping. "It's a more abstract approach, Ethan," she retorted, a laugh bubbling up. "Perhaps I'm pioneering a new artistic movement, construction site chic." "Right," Ethan said, grabbing a spare brush. "Let me show you how the old masters did it, the ones who actually wanted the paint on the wall." Their easy banter became a common soundtrack to the renovation. He taught her the difference between a Phillips head and a flathead screwdriver. She, in turn, would sometimes talk about the complexities of global markets or the frustrating bureaucracy of big business, often with a dry wit that surprised him. He learned that beneath the billionaire heiress facade was a woman who craved tangible results, who found a strange satisfaction in the smell of fresh sawdust and the sight of something broken being made whole. And Claire began to see beyond Ethan's reserved, sometimes cynical exterior to the deeply principled, fiercely protective father and the dedicated artisan who took immense pride in his work. But their burgeoning hope wasn't being built in a vacuum. One crisp morning, a gleaming black sedan out of place amidst the organized chaos of the construction, rolled up to the barn. Marcus Thorne, a senior board member at Sterling Global, emerged. He was a man whose tailored suits seemed to have the stiffness of his opinions woven into the fabric. He surveyed the scene with a thinly veiled disdain, his gaze lingering Bulpian on Ethan's work-stained hands. An ambitious undertaking. Claire Thorne commented, his tone dripping with insinuation, as he observed a newly installed hydraulic lift. Quite the charitable endeavour. I trust it's not distracting too much from your more significant responsibilities at Sterling Global." Before Claire could reply, Ethan, who had been inspecting a wiring panel nearby, straightened up. "Every honest job has significance, Mr. Thorne," he said, his voice quiet but firm, meeting the older man's condescending gaze. "Some of us just prefer to see the results of our labour a little more directly than a line on a stock report." Thorne's eyes narrowed, but he merely offered a curt nod before turning his attention back to Claire, launching into a low-toned discussion about brand perception and fiduciary duties. Ethan went back to his wiring, but the encounter left a bitter taste. The town, too, had its own chorus of opinions. While some early recipients of Ethan's off-the-books help minor repairs he'd done for neighbours even before the garage was official, sang his praises, whispers of a different kind began to circulate. Ethan Miller struck gold, didn't he? One nosy acquaintance remarked at the local diner loud enough for Ethan, who was grabbing a quick coffee, to overhear. Ethan simply turned a calm, almost pitying look on his face. "Yep," he said, placing a few coins on the counter. "Solid gold. Found it right next to the unicorn stables and the pot of a leprechaun's lost tools. You should try looking there sometime." The acquaintance flushed and fell silent. Leo, however, wasn't as equipped to deflect the taunts. He came home from school one afternoon, his usual bright demeanour clouded. "Some kids at school, they called me the princess's pet and said you were just her car fixer, boy, Dad," he mumbled, kicking at a loose stone. Ethan's heart ached. He knelt, pulling Leo into a hug. Claire, who had arrived to drop off some invoices, witnessed the exchange from her car, her expression tightening. Later that evening, she and Ethan talked not as boss and employee, or even as partners in a project, but as two people trying to shield a child. Claire surprisingly suggested they invite a few of Leo's classmates and their parents for a garage preview to demystify things, an idea Ethan grudgingly admitted might actually work. The small acts of malice, however, grew bolder. One morning, Ethan arrived to find all 4 tires of his old Chevy slashed. Another day, a crucial set of specialized wrenches went missing from the locked tool cabinet, only to be found later tossed in a nearby ditch. Each incident chipped away at Ethan's carefully guarded optimism, stirring the old dregs of mistrust. Was this just random vandalism or something more targeted? Was Thorne capable of stooping this low? The mini-climax of this brewing storm arrived on a grey, ominous afternoon, just as they were putting the finishing touches on Leo's corner garage. The new sign, bright and hopeful, was ready to be mounted. Ethan was high on a ladder, Claire spotting him when his phone buzzed. It was a blocked number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. A gruff, anonymous voice rasped Miller. "Nice little setup you got there. Be a shame if something happened to it, or to that boy of yours. Some people don't like seeing trash get lucky." Click. Ethan's blood ran cold. He nearly dropped the phone. He scrambled down the ladder, his face pale. "What is it, Ethan? You look like you've seen a ghost." Claire's voice was laced with concern. Before he could fully articulate the threat, Claire's own phone rang. Her expression shifted from concern to disbelief, then to a controlled fury as she listened. "Marcus, what in God's name are you talking about? An ultimatum? You can't be serious." She turned away, her voice dropping, but Ethan could still hear the strained, urgent tones of her side of the conversation. Something about the board, about pulling all funding, about irreparable damage to the Sterling brand, unless she immediately distanced herself from this questionable association. She hung up her hand, trembling slightly, her face ashen. She looked at Ethan, a storm of emotions in her eyes. Anger, fear, and a dawning, terrible understanding. The nearly completed garage, once a symbol of their shared hope, suddenly felt incredibly fragile, caught between a direct, vicious threat and the cold, calculated machinations of a corporate world that saw human lives as collateral damage. The boulders on their road had just become a landslide. Leo's corner garage opened not with a bang, but with a quiet hum of gratitude. The first few weeks were a blur of activity. Ethan, his initial reservations, now replaced by a focused dedication, worked tirelessly. Single mothers with sputtering minivans left with tears of relief. Elderly couples on fixed incomes had their aging sedans made roadworthy again. And struggling veterans found not just expert repairs, but a listening ear. Word spread through the valley, not of a billionaire's pet project, but of a skilled, honest mechanic named Ethan Miller, who was giving people a fair chance. Leo, beaming, would help sweep the floors after school, proudly wearing a miniature Leo's Corner Garage t-shirt Claire had specially made. For a fleeting moment, Ethan allowed himself to believe this fragile peace might last. But Marcus Thorne and the whispers he represented hadn't vanished. The harassment, once minor annoyances, escalated with a chilling boldness. One morning they arrived to find the newly painted sign for Leo's Corner Garage defaced with a crude, insulting caricature of Ethan and Claire alongside the word fraud. Ethan's jaw tightened, his fists clenching, but it was Leo's crestfallen face that truly twisted the knife in his gut. Claire was furious. She called the local sheriff a man whose laid-back demeanor bordered on apathetic. Sheriff Brody listened with a sigh, scratched his chin and delivered his verdict. Probably just some bored kids, Ms. Sterling. Boys will be boys. Maybe don't stir the pot so much with all this free stuff. Tends to make some folks antsy. Auntie Claire had repeated, her voice dangerously low. This is vandalism, Sheriff. A threat. Brody had merely shrugged. Unless you got proof who did it, ma'am, my hands are tied. The feeling of being targeted, of being unprotected, began to weigh heavily on Ethan. He started double-checking locks, his gaze sweeping his surroundings with a wariness he hadn't felt in years. The joy of the garage was now tinged with a constant low hum of anxiety. Then the true storm broke. It arrived on the glossy pages of the Valley Chronicle, the local newspaper, under a headline that screamed, "Billionaire Sterling's Pet Project." In peril, questions raised over lavish spending on local mechanic amidst Sterling global restructuring. The article, clearly fed by an inside source, Ethan had no doubt it was Thorne, was a masterpiece of insinuation and half-truths. It painted Ethan as a cunning opportunist, Claire as a naive, love-struck heiress, squandering company resources, and Leo's Corner Garage as a frivolous, unsustainable vanity project. It even included a blurry, out-of-context photo of Ethan and Claire laughing together while working on the barn, captioned to imply a scandalous affair. Ethan stared at the paper, the newsprint blurring before his eyes. He felt a cold, sick dread pool in his stomach. He'd become a local spectacle, his life, his integrity, his relationship with his son, all twisted into a sordid caricature for public consumption. He remembered his bitter joke to a friend and muttered, "Well now, I'm more famous than any Hollywood actor. Too bad the role of gold-digging freeloader wasn't one I auditioned for." The fallout was immediate. Whispers turned into open stares. Parents at Leo's school gave him pitying or disdainful glances. Even some of the people he'd helped at the garage now looked at him with a newfound uncertainty. Claire was, for the first time since he'd met her, unreachable for 2 full days. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Ethan's calls to her assistant were met with polite but firm deflections. Miss Sterling is in critical meetings regarding Sterling Global's current strategic realignment. She will be in touch when her schedule permits. When Claire finally appeared at the garage late one evening, she looked exhausted. Her usual vibrant energy dimmed her eyes, shadowed. She wore a severe business suit, a stark contrast to the jeans and work shirts he'd grown accustomed to seeing her in. There was a new, almost imperceptible distance about her. "Ethan," she began, her voice carefully neutral. "We need to talk. There are complexities arising with the board, the optics of this project in light of some internal company pressures." But Ethan wasn't listening to the carefully chosen corporate jargon. He was looking at the woman before him, a woman who suddenly seemed more like the untouchable billionaire he'd first glimpsed on her sun-drenched terrace, and less like the partner who'd shared laughter and paint splatters with him in the barn. The newspaper article, the cold shoulder from her office, the anonymous threats, it all coalesced into a single unbearable realization. "Optics," he finally cut in his voice, dangerously quiet. "Is that what this is about? Claire optics? Or is it about the fact that your pet project is suddenly making your rich friends uncomfortable?" His own past, the sting of Jessica's betrayal, the years of feeling inadequate, all rose like bile in his throat. "That's not fair," Ethan. Claire said, a flash of hurt in her eyes. "You don't understand what I'm up against. Marcus Thorne is—" "I understand perfectly." Ethan shot back, his control snapping. "I understand that when things get tough, people like you cut your losses. I understand that I'm the inconvenient truth in your otherwise pristine world." He gestured around the garage at the tools, the lifts, the sign bearing his son's name. Was any of this real, or was I just some feel-good story for you? A way to polish your image. Billionaire Sterling helps a poor single dad. Sounds great in a press release, doesn't it? How can you say that Claire's voice rose laced with an anguish that in his pain he couldn't fully register? "Everything I did it because I believed in you in this, believed in me." Ethan laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Or believed in the idea of me, the noble savage you could rescue. Am I just your charity case? Claire, my son is Leo, just a pawn in your philanthropic game." The words once spoken hung in the air, ugly and irretrievable. He saw Claire flinch, as if he'd struck her. "I am not a project," he roared, the years of suppressed frustration, of feeling small and overlooked erupting. "I don't need your pity, and I sure as hell don't need to be someone's dirty little secret, or their convenient stepping stone." He was trembling, his heart pounding. The fear of being dependent, of being seen as less, had always been his Achilles heel, and now it felt as if Claire, willingly or not, had aimed straight for it. Claire stood, frozen, tears welling in her eyes, her carefully constructed composure finally shattering. "Ethan, please," she whispered, reaching a hand towards him, but he recoiled. "No," he said, his voice flat, devoid of its earlier fire, now just filled with a vast aching emptiness. I'm done with this charade." He looked around the garage, their shared dream now a monument to his own naivety. "I should have known better. People like me don't get fairy tales." He turned and walked towards the door, each step an agony. He didn't look back. At Claire, didn't see the tears streaming down her face, didn't hear the small broken sob that escaped her lips. He walked out into the encroaching night, leaving behind the scent of oil metal and shattered trust. Leo, who had been quietly playing in his designated corner, had witnessed the raised voices, the raw anger. He ran to the doorway, his small face a mask of confusion and fear, watching his father's retreating figure. Daddy, where are you going?" Ethan didn't stop. He couldn't. Claire sank onto a nearby workbench, the fight draining out of her. The beautiful, hopeful space of Leo's corner garage, filled with the promise of new beginnings, now stood silent, cloaked in the heavy pall of misunderstanding and broken hearts. The storm had hit with full force, and in its wake, all that remained was devastation. The days that followed Ethan's departure from Leo's corner garage were a dull, aching echo of his old life, yet profoundly altered. He went back to piecemeal jobs, the scent of cheap oil and grinding metal, a poor substitute for the purposeful energy of the barn. Leo was quieter, his bright spark dimmed by the unspoken tension and the loss of their shared dream. Ethan missed the garage, missed the easy camaraderie he'd found with Claire, missed the feeling of building something that mattered. He replayed their last bitter argument endlessly, the harsh words he'd flung, the pain in her eyes. His pride, that stubborn, thorny shield, felt less like a defense and more like a self-imposed prison. He saw now that her efforts, however clumsily communicated at times, had been genuine. One afternoon, an elderly neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, found herself with a flat tire and no one to call. Ethan, seeing her distress, quietly fixed it, waving off her attempts to pay. "Just doing what a neighbor should, Mom." He'd mumbled a faint echo of Claire's "pay it forward," resonating in his mind. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was a start, a crack in his wall of resentment. Meanwhile, Claire Sterling was waging a different kind of war. The confrontation with Ethan had shaken her to her core, a brutal mirror to her own missteps in navigating the treacherous currents of her world. But it had also ignited a cold, clear fury within her, a resolve to reclaim not just the garage, but her own integrity. She called an emergency meeting of the Sterling Global Board. Marcus Thorne, smug and expectant, clearly anticipated her capitulation. He was in for a shock. Claire, armed with meticulously prepared legal documents and an unshakable calm, didn't just defend the garage. She went on the offensive. She exposed Thorne's underhanded tactics, his deliberate sabotage of a legitimate philanthropic venture for personal leverage. She spoke not of optics or brand perception, but of human decency of community, of the kind of legacy Sterling Global should stand for. "Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice ringing with an authority that surprised even those who had known her for years. "Perhaps you should focus your considerable talents on investments that yield true value. Say, a crash course in basic human empathy. I hear the returns, while not immediately quantifiable in dollars, are quite substantial for the soul." When Thorne and his allies threatened to oust her, Claire calmly announced she was prepared to liquidate a significant portion of her personal Sterling Global holdings, enough to buy out dissenting shareholders and restructure the company's philanthropic arm to operate with genuine autonomy, free from their self-serving interference. The move was audacious, financially staggering, and it left the boardroom in stunned silence. Marcus Thorne, his face a mask of disbelief and fury, found himself utterly outmaneuvered. His influence, so carefully cultivated, crumbled. A week later, as a persistent, melancholic rain fell, much like the day they first met, Ethan was in his cramped living room, trying to help Leo with his homework, the silence heavy between them. A knock on the door, hesitant but firm, startled them both. Ethan opened it to find Claire Sterling standing on his doorstep, soaked to the bone, no expensive car or driver in sight. She was holding a small, slightly damp, handmade wooden sign. "Ethan," she said, her voice a little raw, a shiver running through her. I seem to be in need of a good mechanic again. Though this time it's not exactly a car that's broken." Her eyes, earnest and vulnerable, met his. "I didn't come to fix things with money, Ethan. I came because I miss you. Not just your skills with an engine, not just your hands that can mend anything. I miss you." Ethan was speechless. His gaze dropped to the sign in her hands. She held it up. In slightly uneven, lovingly painted letters it read, Miller and Rogue Garage. Family-owned. Rogue Ethan finally managed a ghost of his old dry humor flickering. Are you planning on opening a garage for pirates? Claire, a watery smile touched her lips. For those who dare to be different, she said softly. For those who dare to live authentically. Like you, Ethan. And perhaps, like the woman I'm trying to become. She took a shaky breath. I dismantled the old power structure at Sterling Global, Ethan. Bought out Thorne and his cronies. Lost a few investors, ruffled a lot of very expensive feathers. I don't care. I'd rather lose billions than lose the only person who ever saw me when I wasn't wearing a price tag, the person who showed me what true worth really means. Her voice choked a little. You gave me back my humanity, Ethan. Let me stand by yours. Tears welled in Ethan's eyes, blurring her image. The walls he'd built so carefully around his heart, brick by painful brick, finally crumbled. You really did all that, he whispered, stunned. Claire nodded, a single tear tracing a path down her rain-streaked cheek. Everything, she affirmed. Everything except my heart. I think that's still with its rightful mechanic. He didn't say anything more. He simply reached out, pulled her into his arms and held her tightly, the rain a gentle curtain around them, washing away the last vestiges of pride and misunderstanding. Months later, Miller and Rogue Garage didn't just reopen. It roared back to life. Bigger, brighter, and busier than ever, its reputation for kindness and quality work spread like wildfire. The sign, now professionally finished, but still bearing the heart of Claire's handmade original, hung proudly above the entrance. The community, seeing the genuine commitment, rallied around them. Even Sheriff Brody was seen stopping by for a paid oil change, tipping his hat respectfully to Ethan. Marcus Thorne was quietly phased out of Sterling Global, his career tarnished. Ethan and Claire worked side by side, true partners in every sense. The easy banter returned, now underpinned by a deep, abiding love and respect. Leo, his spark fully rekindled, was the garage's unofficial mascot and chief morale officer, his laughter echoing through the busy bays. One sunny afternoon, as Ethan and Claire watched Leo meticulously fixing a toy truck with a plastic wrench and a serious expression, Claire leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder. "We did it," she whispered. Ethan smiled, a genuine, contented smile that reached his eyes. "We did, Claire. We really did." He knew there would still be challenges. Life always had a few more potholes in store. But now they would face them together. He'd learned that sometimes fixing a stranger's broken-down truck in the rain could end up mending two broken hearts, and that giving kindness without expectation could be the most powerful engine for change in the world. Leo looked up from his work, grinning. "When I grow up," he announced proudly, "I'm gonna open my own garage. It'll be called Leo's Super Pro Max Garage." Ethan and Claire exchanged a look, and their laughter, warm and full of hope, mingled with the happy sounds of a garage built not just on tools and expertise, but on kindness, courage, and a love that had weathered the fiercest storm. And so the Miller and Rogue Garage didn't just fix cars. It mended spirits, becoming a small beacon of warmth in their town, a testament to how a single act of kindness offered without expectation in a storm can indeed redirect a life's entire course. Isn't it remarkable how sometimes the most valuable currency we possess isn't found in a wallet, but in the courage to offer a helping hand to see the human being behind the circumstance? Perhaps these ripples of compassion, starting from the unlikeliest of encounters, are shaping our own communities, in ways we don't always see. This journey of Ethan and Claire has certainly left us reflecting, and we imagine it might have touched you too. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What to you was the most powerful payment made in this story? And what do you believe truly makes a life rich? Your insights mean the world to us, and so does your feedback. We are always striving to make these stories even more impactful. If you have any ideas on how we can improve our storytelling, or if there was a particular moment today that resonated with you, or one you wished was different, please do share your constructive thoughts in the comments below. Your voice helps us grow and bring you even better narratives. If Ethan and Claire's story of unexpected turns and heartfelt connections warmed your spirit, please give this video a like. And if you feel this story could offer a little hope or a moment of reflection to someone else, we'd be grateful if you'd share it. To continue exploring more journeys of the heart, full of life's surprising twists and profound lessons, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell. We have so many more stories to share with you. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Until next time, may your own acts of kindness, big or small, create beautiful ripples. Take care.